Alrighty folks, we're going to go ahead and start today's web presentation. Again, today's topic is Separation Studio, and we're going to talk about simulated process screen printing. Now, to begin, we're going to start with some visuals. How about that? So I took some photographs this morning of a screen printed garment, and this really is going to help sort of set the pace for today's presentation. So let me pull open this first image. And hopefully this isn't too racy for anybody, but this is a graphic that is screen printed. And in order to see that, actually I'm going to enlarge this. So we'll make this full screen so everybody can see this properly here. Let me go and make that full screen. So you can see here as we zoom in, you'll see that it may look like a photograph, but as we zoom in, we see that it's actually screen printed. And of course, that's a zoom at 1,000 times. The photo was taken, probably 5 feet back. You can see there's a QR code that's been screen printed. So this was a graphic that was produced in Separation Studio, or rather separated in Separation Studio. And let me share some other examples of this garment with you. Not only is it a cool graphic, but it really helps to showcase simulated process screen printing and the software that we're going to explore today, which is, of course, Separation Studio. So here you can see this is sort of a zoom in using a zoom lens. And you can see as I zoom in even further, you'll see that this technology will help you to take a digital image or graphic and separate it for the screen printing purpose. Now, one of the special functions of Separation Studio is when it's separating, it's going to help you to prepare the image for printing on a dark garment. Now, as we zoom way in here, let's kind of give an explanation of this process of simulated process printing, which isn't a very good description, by the way. This is kind of an industry fallacy or improper description. And it's certainly not a good description for Separation Studio. A lot of people refer to Separation Studio as simulated process screen printing software. And we're really not simulating anything. What this Separation Studio product does is it decompiles the information in a RGB value bitmap. That's the technical term. And I'm going to give you some actual non-cerebral examples of that as we progress through the presentation today. But really what we're doing is we're mixing ink. That's the best way I can describe this. So you can see, we can see different colors of ink as I zoom in here. What do we see? We see gold, we see red, we see white. And combined, when we mix those colors, it produces this photo quality replication on a garment or apparel. Let me share some other images of this screen printed garment. So again, here's a photo zoom or a zoom into an area that has a lot of detail. So you can look at the shading and the shadows that are in the wheel of this particular motorcycle, and you can really see the highlights and the detail that's produced. And again, it's a special algorithm, it's a special software product that's taking that digital image and preparing it for screen printing so we can reproduce that photo quality image on our screen. All right, here's one more image. I took this was some morning light casting on this, but nonetheless, I don't want to zoom into that area. But you can see as I zoom in here, you again see the quality that you can produce as a result of having the right tools. Now, it's kind of ironic. I didn't plan this, but I read a really great quote right before I started this presentation. I was just tuning into my RSS feeder and catching up on news, and I saw a quote, and the quote was, "Innovation is not an option." And this is particularly true for apparel decorators and screen printers. I mean, we're in a new economy. It's a new world. And, I've oftentimes talked to, business partners and associates and people that I work with, and one of the, I guess, most mysterious things for me is why aren't more screen printers taking advantage of printing like this? So many people we talk to are really stuck in the spot color, very simple vector-based printing because that's their comfort base. They haven't innovated to learn new printing methods or techniques. They haven't adopted the right technology in order to produce this kind of content. So I'm glad that you folks have joined us because hopefully you think the same and you hope that innovation is an important part of your business. So, okay, without further ado, let's actually jump into this technology. And what I want to do is I first need to get a graphic, a digital image, right, to separate. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use another software product that we promote through Ryonet, which is called Inksoft. Now, I'm not going to go through a huge cross-promotion here, but I wanted to expose all of you to this product. In particular, I see some of the folks that are attending today are actually Inksoft users, so this will hopefully give you a little insights in how you, as an Inksoft user, would use this tool, Separation Studio, to help you color separate a digital image that might be produced online in Inksoft's online design studio. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to use Inksoft to grab a design. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to keyword search for football. And I want to find a high resolution digital image. and we're going to kind of fake the checkout process so we can get access to this graphic. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually just grab a piece of clip art, not a design template. One of the techniques that's really important in this software is separate the digital image, then add vector text as a spot color. So if you want to get really, really crisp text, you're always going to want to establish your text in vector. So that's a really important workflow. Now, in the event that maybe a graphic designer had created a really cool high-end digital image and they used Photoshop text, not a crisis, but if you ever have the chance, if you are in charge of creating the art content, you'll generally want to create that content, the digital element, and then you want to actually, any vector elements that are possible, text or other miscellaneous vector elements, you'll always want to preserve those in vector. You don't want to degrade those, because when you go to print, again, if I can retain the quality of the vector file and use that as a spot color, I'm going to get really crisp output. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this flame-based clip art image we have here on a dark garment. So we're going to sort of synthesize, and sort of fake, an order on a dark garment. And we're going to talk about how Separation Studio is going to help you prepare that for the screen printing purpose. So again, here we're going to jump to the Design Studio. I'm just going to do a fake checkout just to grab this high-resolution digital image of a football with the flames coming off of it. And this is what we're going to use to actually color separate. And I'm going to guide you through the process using this as sort of a target image. So here I'm going to go ahead and position this. Again, what if somebody wanted this screen printed on a dark garment? We would have to generate an underbase white. We would have to, again, decompile all of this color information into color channels. I mean, it can get so crazy, right? But that's why Separation Studio was invented, to make this process easy. Okay, so here we have our graphic positioned on our dark garment. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the shopping cart. We're going to check out, and I'm going to go and log in and just grab that design. And then we're going to transition, and we're going to move into Separation Studio. Now the thing I want to point out, usually the first question that we get when somebody asks about Separation Studio is the first thing they ask is it is it Mac or PC only? And the answer is it is compatible with both Mac or PC. So it doesn't matter what operating system you're using, you can use Separation Studio. So what I'm going to do now is let's check out and let's go download this high resolution football image. So I'm going to go and check out using a fake purchase order. And I'm going to click Pay Now with Purchase Order. And then I'm going to log in as an admin. And I'm going to go and download that particular image. So I'm going to click Sign In. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in quickly. And we're going to go and download this file and then jump right to Separation Studio. So I'm going to click on Orders. And once I'm in the Order in bucket, I'll go to Approve Orders. And I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom to retrieve this particular order that we just inputted. All right, so what we're going to do now is suck down this high-resolution file. So you can see Inksoft prepares the designs in a raster PNG file, and here we have a layered PDF. So you can see on the, if I were to click on this particular image, I would get a high-resolution preview here, or a high preview. And again, you're going to see that high-resolution digital graphic, and it's transparent, and you can see that mocked up on the garment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to download this raster PNG file. So we're going to go ahead and suck that down. While this is downloading, we're going to go and fire open Separation Studio. So I'll go ahead and minimize this browser window here. We'll close this particular window. What I'm going to do now is hover my mouse over the Separation Studio icon. And let's actually open up this file, this football file, in a preview here so you can see what this looks like. So again, this is a high-resolution file. Let's let this finish sucking down. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and click on Separation Studio to launch this software product. Now again, this is PC and Mac compatible, so it doesn't matter what operating system you're working on. One of the other benefits of this product is it comes with a dongle rather than a serial number. Now that means that you can install it in multiple locations. So oftentimes with software, you get a serial number and you can only operate that on the computer that has been designated with that serial number. And that doesn't really benefit you in a majority of ways because it's not easy to transport. Meaning, what if I wanted to work on some projects and separate and prepare files and output films, in the evenings or on a weekend, but my shop, is closed? I mean, it's just, is chaotic. So with the dongle, if you've never seen a dongle, it's sort of looks like a USB memory stick, and that helps to protect the technology. And the other benefit of this is it keeps the price of the software integrity. So, if the software is being pirated and, developers can't be compensated properly, well, they have to charge more to people that are honest. So this helps to keep the integrity of the product and the price point low. So there's a lot of benefits to having dongle protected software. All right, great. So here's this high resolution file that we just generated from Inksoft. So you can see as I zoom in, you can see it's high res. What I'm going to do is I'll just save this to my desktop now. So we're going to go ahead and save this. And I will save this now to my desktop so it's easy to access, and we'll just name this football. And I'll go ahead and now save that to my desktop. So here we have our high resolution PNG file, so there's no transparency, or there's a transparency rather, there's nothing in the background like that white bounding box that oftentimes you see accompanying digital images. All right, so here we are in the Separation Studio window. Now what's the first thing you notice about this interface? Well, most people, if this was a live event, you would respond, well, it's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward, it's uncomplicated. So again, this is highly specialized technology, and its purpose is to take a digital image and break down the color information so you can screen print it. Now I want to pause to caution you, there's a lot of color separation or simulated process separation in the industry, and a lot of it is poison. A lot of it is Photoshop actions, very expensive Photoshop actions. And if you're familiar with an action effectively automates a bunch of processes. I mean, anybody can record an action. And so a lot of people have created these actions to globally make decisions on every single design, meaning there's rules that are going to be standard for every single graphic. Well, not every graphic is the same. In fact, every graphic is unique. So this is truly unique technology. In fact, this used to be the world's most expensive Photoshop plugin at $15,000. Well, now it's its own dedicated product, meaning it has its own interface, its own window. So what we're going to do now is we're going to import that file that we created that's on our desktop. Here's that football PNG file that we just created in Inksoft. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the import icon, and you can see that here at the very top left. So first step is to obviously import a file into Separation Studio. Now before I do that, I'm going to give you a word of caution. Garbage in is garbage out. I learned that a long time ago when I started my career in the imprinting industry. So if your expectation is to be able to take a 72 DPI, tiny logo that you right mouse click from the web and separate it and get amazing results, you're kidding yourself. I mean, that's just not possible. So again, this is a tool, and its purpose is to take artwork that's been prepared properly, and it will color separate it. So with that said, you definitely have to have an understanding of art content in order to produce good quality separations. Good quality separations go on to produce good quality films. Good quality films go on to produce good quality prints. So you can see how it all starts with artwork. Garbage in means garbage out. So with that said, fortunately, we got a high resolution image out of Inksoft. I'm going to go ahead and import that now. Now, as soon as I import the file, and you can see here the software is thinking, we're making a lot of decisions per second. So there's a specialized algorithm that's going to make decisions on this graphic. So as we import it, just simply by opening that design, it's going to be automatically color separated. And automatically, it's going to be separated into 9 color channels. Every single time you import a file, it will be separated into 9 channels. That doesn't mean you have to output 9 films and burn 9 screens. It just means Separation Studio is making the best decision, and then you have an opportunity to customize that decision. So now let's talk about the workflow of preparing a design to then go on to printing films. So we've talked a little bit about the workspace. It's pretty straightforward. As you can see, the icons are pretty, commonsensical. We have import, we have close, we have save. So let's talk about this interface. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by actually working at the bottom, the very bottom, because these are pretty important functions. So at the very bottom, you see an option here that says proof positive. This is a really important part of this technology. And the proof positive is going to be your visual aid to understanding how any changes you might make to the design, or to the saturating or changing or modifying any parts of the design, how that's going to impact the look. So think of your proof positive as the actual rendering of the screen print. Think of it as a virtual screen print. And this software uses a very unique technology called ViewWrite. And as the name may imply, whatever changes you make on screen or to the channels is going to be reflected, and it's going to be reflected accurately. So rather than having to burn or generate your films, burn your screens, and get to press to find out that, well, the red needs more saturation, you can do that here in the software. So it's going to save you time, and it's going to save you money. All right, so that's the proof positive. Now we can also generate a proof positive to send to a client. So here under the File menu, I can print color proof. So this is a great way to send, a proof to a client to get their acknowledgement. Yes, the red is intense enough, or hey, can you bring out some more of the flames? We want more red in the flames. It's a great communication tool. Now, in terms of the channels, what we see the right print order. So the first thing we would print is the base white. One of the things I love most about this software is I can click on these different channels to see that particular channel, to see the information or the data that resides in that particular channel. So it's a really great way for you to get an understanding of the composition of the design and how this will output. Now, it's also in the right print sequence. So we have the base white, and then we have, as you can see here, we're migrating from dark to light. So what I can do now, this is one of my other favorite features, is I can get a virtual understanding of how this is going to print. So what I can do now is I have the active channel, base white. But what I can do now is I can click on the red channel. We can introduce the red into that. So it's a great way for you to really get a sense. In fact, I'm going to go through and deselect these channels so you can see that process now. So let's go and take this from the topmost channel. I'm going to work through this so you can see how this would input, or output rather. So let's open up a new window here. And what we're going to do is I'm basically going to layer. We're going to go from the base white. I'm going to introduce red into that particular design just to see what this is going to look like. So let me go and deselect these other channels here. And we're going to go and do kind of like a virtual press walk here. So let's, again, deselect these channels. And we'll click just on the base white. All right, so here we just have our base white. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce red into this print. So we would print our base white. We would flash. Then I would introduce the red into the design. Now, can you see what happens as soon as I mix red with the base white? What do we get? Because we're printing with different intensities of red, different saturations of red, we're going to get all of the tones, between white and red. So what does that produce? We get brown tones. We get some red elements in here. Now we can also zoom into this. So again, we can see some of the texture and the detail in here. So I'm going to zoom in, and again, if I deselect the red, you can see as soon as I introduce white and red, you can see the output that's being created. Now you should also know that we're actually using the background, or the ground color. So the substrate color. In this case, we're printing on black, right? So what we can do is, or what Separation Studio is going to do, is it's actually going to use the garment and allow some of the garment color to show through the design to utilize black. So you can see that texture now in the design. So I'm going to go back to Fit to Screen. So you can see where we're letting black or the garment color show through, using that as the ground color. Now I want to point out something. Here's a tip. Anytime that you're creating something, you should always do it with a ground color of black. Anytime a design looks good on a black substrate, it's going to look good on color. However, you have the opportunity to customize your ground color. So if we were going to output this on, say, a brown garment or a red garment, whatever color garment we're going to output on, I can change that ground color to reflect, the actual substrate color. So again, let's go back and we'll toggle to black just for sake of this presentation. So again, a virtual press walk, we have our base white. Then I would choose to mix red or print red. And this is going to be wet on wet. So there's no flashing in between these colors. So it's going to speed your print process. Now you can see here if I add blue, there is actually no data in the blue channel. You can see that there's nothing that resides in this blue channel. There's zero information. Now you can see that that's also true of purple. There's no information in purple. If I click on the green channel, same, no information. Turquoise, no information. Now, in some occasions, you can actually change your ground color. So let's change this to white. So if there's some faint information, it may show up, using a light color channel. So here I have gray, and you can see how faint, or there's a little bit of information available in the gray channel. And let's change the ground color and see if that's visible as well. So we'll change and toggle to black as a ground color for the gray channel. So what we have the decision in these particular examples is we can eliminate or delete unnecessary channels. We can also combine information from other channels. So there's two sort of processes here. I can see that there's no information in blue, purple, and green, and also turquoise. So I'm going to go ahead and right mouse click on the blue channel. I have the ability to delete that channel. And oftentimes when I'm doing this, I like to keep the proof positive active so I can see any changes that I make. I can see the impact to that on the workspace. And I'm going to go and activate all the other channels. So we'll go and activate the gold, the gray, and the top white. So what I can do is I can right mouse click on the purple channel and I can delete that. and you'll see the change that's going to be made on screen. There's no impact because there's no data. I'm going to go ahead and right mouse click on green, and I can say delete channel, and I'm going to do the very same with turquoise. Right mouse click and delete. So what we've done is we've just gone from 9 colors, we've reduced this now to 5 colors. So again, notice this, if I deselect gray, what impact is that going to have on the design? So if I know this is a bit hard to see because of the webinar software, but let's make it a little bit more clear. If I go ahead and delete the gold or deselect gold, how is that going to impact this file or this print? So you can see that impact now on the screen. And of course, you're going to have to be the judge of what constitutes quality. Because every single graphic is unique, there is no sort of standard for quality. It's really going to be a sense of your decision making. Fortunately, because of ViewRight, it's going to assist you in making those decisions. So you can see as soon as I introduce gold into this, what impact does that have? Well, it brings out a lot of highlight and dimension to this. It brings out some of the realistic texture or sort of the realistic flames in this particular design. Now, the other decisions you have is you have the ability to merge some of these channels. So you can see here in the channels drop-down menu, I can merge gray, I can merge purple or turquoise. So let's say that there is some data that it's available on those channels. Rather than deleting it, you can shift some of that information over to some of the other channels to take on some of that data and detail and mix colors to synthesize that particular dropped-out color. So in this case, I had the decision to merge gray if I thought that was important. I could retain all that information that happens to be in gray, but I can shift it onto another channel. So you can see I clicked merge gray. Now I've reduced this from a 9-color channel all the way down to 4 colors. Now I'm going to hit Control Z. I want to show something. I want to share something with you. So Control Z is the oops button. We can go back in time. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom back into this particular design. I'm going to zoom into the sort of the laces on this particular file. I'm going to grow this a little bit. So notice this, there is gray sort of shading on this particular design that brings out some of the highlights and some of the mid-tones and low tones. You can see if I were to turn off the gray channel, you can see the impact that's going to have on the design. Now it's not overwhelming, it's not crucial, it's not critical. So you can see again, if I click the gray channel, we can see in the flames also there's some areas that have gray. So again, I might not want to delete gray. This is when it would be smart to go to the channels drop down and merge gray. So I'm going to use and maintain that texture and those elements, but I'm going to shift it and shift that data onto some of the other channels here, some of the other films. So again, I've just reduced this from 9 color down to 4 color. Now again, I have the ability to do sort of that virtual press walk. So what I can do is I can see my base white, and let's zoom out now or fit to screen. And now I have the opportunity to see, okay, this is my base plate. Now I can go and introduce the red and see the impact that that's going to give me. Introduce the gold, and I can see the top white. Now, one of the questions that we oftentimes get is, do I have to print with a top white? And the answer, unquestionably, is yes. Now, some people refer to the top white as the magic white, and this is the final print, or the final pass of ink, and this is what's going to bring out all of the sort of the lighting effect. And the lighting effect is what's going to give this texture and dimension. And that's what's going to bring out the shadows and the shading. So it's absolutely critical that you print with a top white. Otherwise, your file is going to look sort of flat and ordinary. And that's not what you want to deliver to your client, right? So you can see how as soon as I introduce that top white, look how it just really brings out, it almost looks like light is impacting this, like it's top lit. So very, very critical. All right, let's talk about some of the other tools in this workflow and process, because no two graphics are the same. Oftentimes you need the controls to make some decisions, to override some of the mathematics that have gone on behind the scenes. So one of the tools I want to point out to you, or a series of the tools I'm going to point out to you, are the saturation tools. And as the name implies, saturation tools are your ability to restrict or take away the intensity of a particular color or enhance the intensity of a color. And we can do this in very, very unique ways. We can target a specific area in a design using some of the saturation tools, or we can choose to globally increase saturation. So let's talk about the latter. Let's talk about globally increasing the saturation. So you can see here I am now hovering this the hand tool, which allows me to go and pinpoint. Think of it as like sort of a pick tool. So what I can do now, and I'll zoom in here so you can see this a little bit better. So let's zoom into this design and go back here. So notice on the very right hand side you get your channel view here. And so notice if I hover my hand tool over a specific area, you can see the percentages of ink in that particular area. So here we have 80% base white, 0% red, 11% gold, and then we're hitting it with 80% top white. So this gives me the sense of what percentages of ink are mixing. And you remember, if we go back to my photographs that I took this morning, we're mixing ink. Wet on wet is going to go on to produce this. And this is a technique known as flamenco printing. And I know that I don't want to get too cerebral, and I just learned a lot of this myself. I spent a few days working with the developer of this software, who's been at this for, he's a godfather of screen printing. And it's just crazy, the algorithms and the technology to go on to do this. But again, what we're doing is we're mixing ink in very strategic ways to go on to produce this photo quality imprint on apparel. It's crazy. So you can see here, especially the sun, the sunset. Look how we're mixing, variations of white, red, and gold to produce all of this variation, all of this shading and shadowing. It's crazy, right? So again, let's go back into the saturation tools. I get distracted very easily. So back to the saturation tools. There's a number of tools we can use. The first thing I'm going to share with you is how to adjust saturation sort of globally. And what I'll do is I'm going to go back to fit to screen so we can see how this would be impacted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the name of the channel, so red, spot color red. So I'm going to double click to adjust that channel. So here I get a adjust by saturation range, so the highlights and the low. So you can see here, if I crank up the high saturation, you can see how that totally impacts my file. Wow, that blows out the browns, but it brings out the red in the flames. So I probably don't want to make modifications to that, right? So I can go back and position this where it would be appropriate. So you can see I can minutely and incrementally adjust this. And again, because of the view right technology, I'm going to see the impact that's going to have on my design. So that's the high saturations. Now, what if I bring and dial in the low saturations? Wow, you can see that really brings out the life in this particular design. But again, you can use these tools and the view right technology to really dial in the way this is going to look. So what I oftentimes like to do is click through these different channels. I like to see how, making some of these global changes, how that's going to impact my file. Now, let me help you visualize how this will globally change. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the red channel. Here's all of the information. Here's all of the ink that would be imprinted in the red screen, the red film. So what I'm going to do now is double click again on that red channel. Here's our adjust by saturation range. Again, if I blow this out, look how much ink we're going to lay down for red. We're just totally saturating the snot out of that, right? Now, again, if I reduce the low saturation, again, we're letting more, or we're imprinting with less ink, as you can see, and that's going to reduce the saturation in this particular design. So you can see how these controls will let you adjust globally. Now remember, globally, more ink, less ink. That's the sort of the rule here. But that's not always appropriate to globally affect something because, again, in this particular file, and this is actually a really good example, the browns look awesome, but I want to modify the reds. I want the reds and maybe the gold to come out to really, accentuate and exuberate flames. That's a big deal to my client. So what I could do is I can specifically, or I can target specific areas in this particular graphic. So let's focus in on red. I want to bring out dimension in the red area. So one of the tools that I oftentimes will use most is the saturation tool. I'm now hovering my mouse over that particular tool. So if I select saturate, I have the ability at the very top, as you can see, change the diameter. So you can see now how it's pretty small, right? So if I wanted to go in and increase the saturation of just the red outer flame portion, because I know that's not going to impact the brown, in the pigskin, I can control the size of my diameter. So I'm going to crank this up, make it 150 pixel diameter, and this is in a radius. And you can see I can adjust the hardness, and I can also control what sort of elements I'm going to impact. The low saturation, or the high saturation, do I really want to intensely, add ink into this? So you can toggle back and forth. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in here so you can really see how this would work. So let's go and zoom into this particular area, and we'll focus in on just this top portion of the design. So what I'm going to do now is go back and grab that saturation tool. We are going to impact red. So what I'm going to do now is, you can see I'm left mouse clicking, and as I left mouse click, you can see how that's going to intensify. We're laying down more red ink in this particular area because, again, I want to bring out the flames in that particular area. So now I can go ahead and I can choose to zoom out. Now, one of my favorite shortcuts is I can control the nib size, and I can zoom in using my command minus on a Mac. So you can see I can zoom in to specific areas to then maneuver around. So there's some really cool keyboard shortcuts that are going to help you save time and move through this file very quickly. So again, look at some of this detail here, and I'm going to actually go and zoom over to to this area. I'm going to zoom way in here. You can see that there's not a lot of red ink in this particular area. In fact, I'm going to go and change my ground color to white, so you can see, there's hardly any white, just really faint in this specific area. But if I go and grab that saturation tool, I can bring out the intensity of that red information in this area. So you can see how that brings out some of that detail. Now again, I can change this and bring out the high saturation. So by toggling, I can bring out some of the high saturation in some of these areas. So you can see that now being inputted. And I can control sort of the midtones, if there's any midtones that I need to bring out. So again, I can really dynamically rock this file out. And when I'm done with this process, again, I can toggle back to, actually let's go in and add a little more dimension into this so you can see how this would be changed. And what I'll do now is toggle back to the view right technology so I can see exactly how this is going to impact my design. So let's go back to our proof positive here. I'm going to go back to black so we can see how this would output on black. And you can see that change now made on screen. Look how the red pops off. As before, and I should have duplicated this window so I could have shown you before and after. But remember, it was a little bit more subtle. It was more orange than red. But now we're really saturating that particular red, and it really pops off. Now we could do the same thing of gold. If I want to increase the saturation in gold, I have the ability to now do that and really bring out some of that dimension to make the flames pop. So the saturation tools are super valuable. Now there's a few other saturation tools that will let you target very specific areas. So you can see where my mouse is hovering. I have a lasso tool. Here we have a polygon lasso tool, and we have a select tool. So what I could do is I can go and choose with the polygon tool. I can effectively go and select a certain region or range, and then I can increase the saturation in just that specific area. So this saves you a lot of time. You don't have to do this stuff in Photoshop. You can do this all in this particular tool. So what I can do, you can see I just selected a specific region with the polygon tool, and now I'm using the saturate tool, and I'm only going to impact that specific area. I can't impact or affect anything else. So let's say that you had, just elements. You can go and target those elements and increase the saturation and target that area. Now I found with the precision, the ability to control the diameter, that it's oftentimes unnecessary to have to go in and use those tools, but they're available because in some occasions they're going to matter. So I hit Control Z to go back in time. You can see how that's going to impact that particular area. So I can go back to edit and I can redo and undo. So you can go and see how changes would impact your design and hit the oops button and get out of jail free. So again, that's how the saturation tools work. As you can see, it's a really great opportunity for you to dial in your design. And I think that, of course this isn't perfect, but nonetheless I've pointed out how you would use this, this tool in this capacity. Now again, you have the ability to do things like maybe back off the top white. So I can make the decision, the top white may be a little too intense. And you can see in this area here where my mouse is hovering, it's a little intense. So I might want to go and adjust the intensity of the highlight white and see if I can't make some adjustments to maybe impact that particular area. And of course we have this area still selected with the lasso. So that's the area that's being impacted by this file. So that's really the workflow in Separation Studio. It's pretty straightforward, as you can see. There are some advanced tools, but oftentimes this provides as much resources as you need. But here we have some advanced tools. We have the eraser tool and we have the desaturation tool. So again, what we just focused on was saturating, adding more ink to a specific area. Well, in some cases you might want to back ink off. So I can use the desaturate tool, which looks like a sponge. And I think that's a really great icon. You think of the sponge as soaking up ink in a specific area. Now I also have the ability to use the eraser tool. This will remove data from certain channels. So if you really just want to eliminate, certain color and data, you have the ability to do that. So that's really the workflow in this process. Now if I were going to output on, say, a light garment and I needed to generate black because there's black in the design, there's also the ability to generate black. Now I can generate from file. This is in almost every occasion you want to generate the black ink from the original graphic. So we've just done a tremendous range of different modifications to this, right? So what we want to do is we want to generate and output the black channel from the actual original graphic. Our original graphic was this PNG file here we have on the desktop. So let's say that truly we're going to output this on a light garment, and I need to generate black, to print. So what I could do in this case is, in fact, I'll go and change this, change the ground color to white. So let's imagine we're preparing this to imprint on a light garment, and I, maybe CMYK isn't appropriate. So what I have the opportunity to do, you can see there's no black in this. I can go to Generate Black from File. Now you have a few different options. You can do a skeletal, which isn't as much black. We can do detailed, which brings out a little bit more black, and then sharper. Now the reasons these are available is maybe you're going to imprint on say a brown garment, and you don't need that much black because we're going to use some of the dark tones and some of the pigment that's already in the garment to bring out some of the dark textures. So oftentimes you can make a decision, whatever's relevant to you. In the education, there's some tips on which one of these settings you would use. In this case, I'm going to generate a sharper base. So what I'm going to do now, I said I want to generate a sharp, black channel, and I'm going to go and select the original file. So I'm going to go and say Open. The software is going to do its thing, run it through its algorithm, do all the mathematics. So come to think of Separation Studio, I think the best analogy is think of it as a calculator. And here you can see now we have a black, sharper channel. And if I focus on that channel, you can see that's the black information we would need to output onto this particular color of garment. Let me close this particular window down, go back to Separation Studio now. So again, if I were to, let's go back to our proof positive here. So we can see now, if I'm going to go and deselect the black, sharper channel, the red, the gold, and the top white. Again, the right print sequence is here. We're going to print the, well, in this case, we wouldn't print base white, but we would do the black sharper if we were printing on a white garment. Then I would introduce the red, as you can see now on screen. Remember, we jacked up those portions of that channel. Gold, we manipulated some of those elements as well, and then we would hit it, and you'd see that final impact. So that's really the workflow in Separation Studio. At this stage, I'll take some of your questions. Why not jump to questions? Actually, let's complete this process here. So let's go. And what I want to do is cancel. We don't want to close out of this. So I'm going to go and change my ground color back to black. And let's pretend that we're going to input this now or output this on a dark garment. I don't need this black sharper channel because that's only relevant if we're going to print on a dark garment. So here I can go ahead and delete that channel because that's unnecessary. Again, with the view right technology, we're going to see how that's going to impact. It's going to go and update on screen. So at this stage, we are going to go now File, and we're going to go Save As. Now, in every single instance, you're going to save this as an EPS file. And oftentimes, this is a hot question. EPS, I thought EPS was for vector only. It is possible to save a digital design in an EPS file format. In fact, EPS stands for Encapsulated Postscript. And the information in this file is postscript information. We want to retain that. And so we can save an EPS file even though it's digital. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as football EPS. I'll save this to my desktop. And what we would do now is we can import this file into Corel Draw or Adobe Illustrator, and we're going to have our spot colors. So in this design, we have a base white. Oops, I need to go back and introduce that base white. And of course, now you can see the way that looks. We have our base white, our red, gold, and top white. So this is a 4-color imprint, right? So we would expect if we go and open up Adobe Illustrator or Corel Draw, and if we import that file, you'd expect to see what? 4 spot colors, right? That's exactly what you're going to see. So let's complete this process. I'm going to go ahead and fire open Adobe Illustrator. Of course, you could do the same in Corel Draw. It's sort of universal. And what I'm going to do, you're actually not going to import or open in Adobe Illustrator. Adobe, because of the nature of the file, you're going to place the file. And I'll walk you through that workflow here. So let's let Adobe Illustrator fire open. And at this stage, what I'm going to do is just click and create a new print document. And naturally, Adobe Illustrator doesn't want to cooperate because we're doing a live web presentation, right? So let's go fire open Adobe Illustrator again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the File menu and click Place. And then I'll browse to the football EPS file that we just generated out of Separation Studio. And I'll place the file in the document. And that's where I'm going to show you those spot colors that will be preserved in the document. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go File, and I'm going to go to Place. Now notice here on the right-hand side, notice our swatches. And what I could do is I have the ability to close out some of these swatches that aren't necessary. I forgot how to do this. But we can close out, I think, actually, let me go to this menu. We can close some of these color swatches that are unnecessary. So I can say, select all unused swatches. And what I have the ability to do now is I can delete those or remove those. So let's go back to, I believe I have the ability to remove all of those unused, and I'm just going to delete on the keyboard now, it doesn't matter. They're all selected, so I'm just going to delete those. I'm going to delete those color swatches. And this one never deletes properly, so I'm going to go and select that and delete that guy. All right, cool. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to go File, I'm going to go Place, and I'm going to choose that football EPS file that we just saved on our desktop, right? So I'm going to place that now into the document. Now the first thing you'll notice is there's a black background, or the ground color. Now don't be alarmed, that's not going to output. Now here's what I want you to notice. Remember I had white, well first I had our registration color, I didn't delete that, and I left white and black. But notice what we see here. We see with that little dog-eared, and I know this may be hard to see here, but you'll see with the dog ear, where I'm hovering my mouse, it says number 1, white, number 2, red, number 3, gold, number 4, top white. So those are the 4 spot colors to produce this graphic that we see on screen. So at this stage, we would go File, Print, and we want to make sure to print it through a PostScript driver to then output this and print films. So that is the process of using Separation Studio. Now, why is this important? Let's kind of, I mentioned one of these quotes I just read before our web presentation, right? The need for innovation. Innovation is not an option. And oftentimes we see a lot of screen printers that have been printing for some time, and they're really stuck doing the spot color stuff, the vector stuff, and they're fearful of this because they assume that they need 9 colors to output a digital design properly. Well, that's not the case. You can produce content like this on a manual screen print press. You don't need an automatic press. You don't need 9 colors. Now, of course, it depends on if you're using specialty inks and what you're trying to derive. But nonetheless, you saw in the workflow that we reduced this to a 4-color imprint. Most screen printers have a 4-color press to be able to replicate this. Now, there are some other techniques, so I don't want to make it sound like it's just super duper easy and autopilot. Garbage in is garbage out, so it all starts with art content. Screen printing, screen printers. Your business is about producing screens. And if you produce good screens, you're going to produce good prints. If you produce good artwork, you're going to produce good screens. So you can kind of see the correlation and the connection there. So there are some techniques, if you get a file and, the colors are sort of lousy, there is some knowledge that's necessary for doing things like color correcting a graphic. This is knowledge that's going to be important no matter what. So Separation Studio, again, is intended to decompile the RGB information in a bitmap. So it is very, very unique technology. We're super excited to be able to offer this to our clients. And we do have a special that we want to share with you for taking the time to join us in today's live web presentation. What we're going to do is we're not going to discount the software. The software is too valuable to discount. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to say, thank you and reward you for investing in Separation Studio. We're going to give you $200 in film credit. So we offer a high-end, high-quality, waterproof film that, of course, is important to the whole process. Good quality films, coating your screens properly. It's a whole formula for creating good quality imprints. So we're going to give you a $200 sort of store credit towards waterproof film. So $200 saved, right? So at this stage, let's go ahead and turn off the recording software. I'm going to take your questions, and we'll move on to our afternoon. So let me go ahead and stop our recording software.